Happy Sunday, Miami Heat fans. This is the Heat Report by Chat Sports. I am Nick Roloff, and this is going to be a little bit of an interesting show here. There's really not much to talk about in terms of news, but I wanted to share this wild story when it came to the NBA trade deadline and how the Miami Heat almost pulled off a Kevin Durant trade rather than the trade that they actually made, where they acquired Andrew Wiggins, Davion Mitchell, Kyle Anderson, and the first-round pick in that multi-team deal where they sent Jimmy Butler to Golden State. And for the people wondering, too, if you have not been aware, those three Miami Heat players that are now on this roster, they were officially inducted to, the Heat. They had a press conference this morning, and they are expected to play their first game for the Miami Heat Monday at home against the Boston Celtics. So that will be a lot of fun. We'll be live for that game, so make sure you subscribe. But I did want to share this Kevin Durant story with the Miami Heat, and it just shows how much they value KD and will always go after Durant if he is on the open market. And we heard the rumors before the Jimmy Butler trade all day, the day before, that Kevin Durant could actually be on the way out of Phoenix because the Suns are prepared to offer KD an extension this offseason, but it is not guaranteed that Durant will sign the extension. And it sounded like if the Suns were able to make a trade where they acquire Jimmy Butler, which is what their number one priority was, and get off of Bradley Beal's contract, KD would sign an extension alongside Jimmy, and it sounded like those two would kind of ride out the rest of their career together down in Phoenix with Devin Booker. But since there was the growing belief that the Suns were not going to be able to do a Jimmy Butler trade, then they were like, well, KD's not going to guarantee himself re-signing with us, and maybe we should look to trade him now and get assets back for Durant. That's where the Golden State Warriors came into play, as they were talking with the Suns on trying to acquire KD, and then ultimately Miami came into play. Well, it was widely reported, and it's now come out, that KD did not want to go back to Golden State. The Warriors attempted to try to trade for KD, but Durant told Steph Curry that he wouldn't really love a reunion and didn't want to go back to the Warriors. And it was something that kind of dissuaded the Golden State front office from going after Kevin Durant any further. And it's such a fascinating thing because I think there were three trades being discussed in further of Miami. There was a 3-team deal where I think KD ended up in Golden State, Jimmy Butler ended up in Phoenix, and a bunch of assets came to Miami. There was the trade that eventually ended up happening where Jimmy Butler went to Golden State and they got assets back, which we already know what they got, Wiggins pick plus other players. And then there was the third one where I think actually the Warriors were cut out, and it was a KD, Jimmy Butler kind of swap type of deal, which we'll explain about that in just a second. But opposite of what KD shared in terms of not wanting to go to the Golden State Warriors, Brian Windhorst and Ramona Shelbourne of ESPN reported that KD would have been open to playing for the Miami Heat. So if he got traded away from Phoenix, which his preference was to stay with the Suns organization and Devin Booker, at least for the rest of this season. We'll see how it goes for the future. But for this season, he wanted to stay in Phoenix. But he would have been open to playing with Bam, with Tyler Hero in Miami, opposed to playing with Steph Curry and Draymond again in Golden State, which I find very, very interesting. And before we share more about this story, let me know your thoughts. Should the Heat have made a Kevin Durant trade? Since they know KD would have been open and maybe the Suns would have played ball, should the Miami Heat have gone all in to trade for KD? Type Y for yes or type N for no. I found it very fascinating, and I wanted to read off this quote from Brian Windhorst in the article that they dropped around KD to Miami. He said, "It was there to be done, Durant to Miami, and the teams traded proposals," sources said. But Phoenix, which paid for Durant in 2023 with 4 first-round picks and 3 pick swaps to Brooklyn, was seeking significant compensation. Ultimately, Miami felt it would be mortgaging its future by going down the path with Durant. Which means, when I'm hearing this quote, and I'm reading this quote, it sounds like if Pat Riley really wanted to, KD would be on the Miami Heat right now. Now, would it have it costed a lot? Yes, it would have. Is it the ultimate right decision for Miami to go the direction they did? That remains to be seen. But when you start to hear that Durant to Miami could have gotten done if the Heat went all in offering for Durant, it is certainly an eyebrow raiser. And you might ask, what is all in? Well, they would have had to swap Jimmy Butler, and they would have had to swap Nikola Jovic. Now, it was very tricky in how you can line up salaries because the Suns could not take any more salary back in a deal in one specific deal because they're in the second apron. So it would have had to be Jimmy Butler, Nikola Jovic, and the first-round pick Miami could send. They only had one tradable first-round pick at the deadline, and it was that 2031 first-round pick. So they would have sent 2031, Jimmy Butler, probably pick swaps, Nikola Jovic. That's probably the one-for-one offer. But there is also a workaround where KD could have been in Heatle and the Heat would have sent more. How is that possible? Well, they could have executed that trade, and then they could have just made a separate trade for like Royce O'Neal, and the Heat also included for Royce O'Neal like Jaime Jaquez Jr. and Kalal Ware. Now, obviously, Jimmy Butler, Ware, Jaquez, and Jovic is one hell of a trade package for KD, and if that was the asking price of Phoenix, you could understand why Pat Riley would not want to do that. But my question is this: if that was on the table, where was the line drawn? How many picks did Phoenix want? How many of the young players that Miami had did Phoenix want? And we're going to talk and discuss more about that here in just a second. But I got to show some love to our sponsor. That is Prize Picks. If you're watching this on February 9th, the big game is today. If you're watching after that, well, hopefully you got part of the action with Prize Picks because it was the last football game of the season. It's the best place to win cash while watching the big game. PrizePicks is giving away a free pick, more than half a yard passing for Patrick Mahomes. So get in on the action before the game gets kicked off later today. Also check out the Super Sweat Millie Winners Big Game lineups in the promos tab. If you tally a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you can win $1 million in promo funds, or split, that is. They offer also weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. PrizePicks, the best daily fantasy sports platform out there. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. One more time, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, as we get back to sharing the story and kind of reacting to it, if you will, is that I find it fascinating. Where would the line have been drawn? Like, seriously, like, obviously, as much as it would have sucked, and Niko Jovic has taken the step this season and has continued to play better and better as the season has gone on, there's still a lot of growth. There's still a lot of things that he is lacking, but it's been very positive to see the production and growth and development of Nikola Jovic. So it would have hurt to get rid of him, but there's no doubt in my mind that if the deal could be done where it was Jimmy Butler, Niko Jovic, and one first-round pick in 2031, I would have done that with no hesitation. I really would have. And I know some people are going to say, KD's 36. He doesn't fit the timeline of Miami. Jovic is so good. I think that if you wanted to seriously kind of not rebuild, but like retool, would that team have won it all? I don't know. Like a Bam, Hero, KD, big, like a trio, and then you have other people off the bench. Like you still would have had Duncan, maybe. Now, who knows? Maybe separate trades would have been made to build a better roster around those three. But you can't tell me that that three doesn't get you in the top 4 of the Eastern Conference and make it interesting when we are in the postseason in a 7-game series. I mean, KD, for all that he is, and I know some people are going to say he's never really done it as a number 1 option unless it's a loaded Golden State Warriors team. I get that talk. I understand it. This is in my opinion, I really truly believe this. It's the best scorer that I've ever watched in my life. And I don't think there will be another better pure scorer of the basketball than Kevin Durant. The way he gets to his spots, the way he rises over you, he is unguardable. He does it from 3, he does it in the mid-range, he can get inside. And the part that I love about KD is that, yeah, he's 35, 36 years old, but his game isn't dependent on athleticism. It's not. He is just so smooth. He beats you with his skill. He beats you with his craft, his tough shot making. It's not like he is a Giannis Antetokounmpo or a young center that is like Shaq, where his production will just fall off a cliff once he loses his athleticism. No, that's not the case with KD. And we're seeing continuously these players get up there in age and defy what we have seen over the past 30 years. Like, I know LeBron's a 101 type of guy, but the dude's 40 plus years old, still putting up numbers and blowing by people, finishing in through contact and throwing down thunderous dunks, and that's not KD's game. But like a KD, Khalil Ware, Bam Adebayo front court with Tyler Hero in the backcourt would have just been absolutely disgusting. It would have been so fun to watch. I would have been all in on making that deal. But the question is, were the Suns asking for more? Were they asking for that separate deal? That's a really good question. But before we finish out this show, make sure you are subscribed. Like I said, we're going live for almost every single Miami Heat basketball game. We'll be live for the debut of Andrew Wiggins, Davion Mitchell, and Kyle Anderson on Monday against the Celtics. Join the channel because we're putting out daily content surrounding the Miami Heat. And the line I probably would have drawn for KD was Khalil Ware. Now, it was being reported, and it's kind of been sourced by Barry Jackson and Brian Windhorst, like the Heat were not pursuing KD to a full degree. They weren't going all in. Even though Durant was open to joining Miami, the Heat were not sending their entire farm for Durant, which is fine. It really is. I'm not going to complain about it. I like where we're at. I like what we're doing. I like the direction that we're going in right now, at least for this season. We'll see where things shake up in the offseason. But I think I would have done a deal again if Ware was staying in Miami. I would have had no issue attaching Jaime Jaquez Jr., Nikola Jovic to Jimmy Butler to try to get a deal done. And maybe it had to be two separate deals. I would have also offered the pick swaps, the 2031 unprotected, to get KD. And I don't think Heat fans would have complained about that. Like, seriously, you have the Jimmy Butler situation get flipped into, Kevin Durant's on the team now, who I would argue is a better fit next to Hero and Bam than Jimmy, because Durant just draws even more attention than Jimmy did offensively. Yeah, KD's not as good defensively as Jimmy Butler is, but you still would have had a 4 or 5 pairing of Bam and Khalil Ware. Like, that's just unbelievable. And then you still could have had Haywood Highsmith, Duncan Robinson off the bench. You maybe would have had dealt Rozier in that deal too, in the separate deal. I don't know. There would have been so many possibilities, but either way, I find it fascinating. And the way I want to round out the show, and I won't talk about the deadline anymore in this video, and we're probably not going to talk about anything that transpired with Jimmy over the trade deadline. If a crazy story comes out, we'll probably talk about it, which there's a chance there is. But the way that I want to finish this is that I still think that you might see the Heat target Kevin Durant again. Like, you heard the rumors that I talked about earlier, is that KD might not sign an extension because they are stuck with Bradley Beal's contract. And if the Suns go out in the first round or are in the play-in or miss the playoffs altogether, which is possible, they're not playing good basketball right now and haven't all season long, there is a serious chance KD requests a trade, or the Suns look to trade Durant in the offseason because they know he's not going to sign an extension. And yeah, he's another half season older, but I could see Miami spinning it again on KD. Like, seriously, think about what Miami can trade on draft night this offseason, assuming that the Warriors pick conveys this season. Or if it doesn't, they still can trade it if it goes to a 2026 top 10 protected. They would have 3 tradable first-round picks in the summer. They do. They have the Warriors pick they can trade. They have the 2030 pick and a 2032 pick, because the 32 pick becomes available on draft night, which then unlocks the ability to trade 30, and then you also have the Warriors pick. So on draft night this offseason, the Heat have 3 tradable first-round picks. You have an expiring contract in Terry Rozier at $26 million. Andrew Wiggins is technically potentially an expiring because his player option, it's the last year of his guaranteed deal next season, I'll say. And then he's got the player option the year after. So technically, if you think about it, you can attach Andrew Wiggins, Terry Rozier, and 3 first-round picks, plus maybe a young guy in Jaquez, Jovic, or Ware. I'm not saying doing it, but you could, for an all-NBA level guy. Because Wiggins' salary and Rozier's salary next year combines for $52 million, 28, 24 mil. 26 and 28. That's what Wiggins makes 28, Rozier makes 26. Sorry for the confusion there. So you can combine those salaries to get to $54 million, attach one of Ware, Jaquez, or Jovic on their rookie contract. That makes it about $57, $58 million in salary, and then 3 tradable first-round picks, and you can have pick swaps every other year. So I'm not saying they should do and offer all of that for a 36, 37-year-old KD, but it would not shock me if Miami entertains the idea of pursuing Durant once again after they know that Durant was open to joining the Heat before the trade deadline and would have been okay with that. So if he's available, I absolutely would expect Miami to go try to trade for KD again in this offseason, because that's Pat Riley's whale, man. He has always wanted Durant, and it would not shock me if the Heat overachieved the rest of the season with this new lineup and they ultimately went in for KD. It's a fascinating thing, but that also is any star. I'm not projecting Anthony Edwards to ask out, but if one of these young, talented All-NBA, All-Star level players ask out and is available for trade, well, then the Heat's package isn't garbage anymore. And that's why getting back some of these assets is important. They have good contracts that they can trade in Rozier and Wiggins. They now will have 3 tradable picks in the offseason, which is the most they have had over the past 2 or 3 seasons. Like, they have not been able to trade that many first-round picks for a while. So they could trade 3 first-rounders. They can have the young talent in Jovic, Jaquez, or Ware, where they look promising and teams could probably want those assets. Plus, you have the contracts. So you are in a pretty lucrative spot right now to make a big-time trade in the offseason if someone good becomes available. We'll ultimately see what ends up happening, but we are going to be focused on the rest of the year for Miami with this new look lineup. Can't wait to watch Wiggins and Davion Mitchell play defense and join this Heat roster on Monday against the Celtics. It's going to be a lot of fun. So make sure you subscribe and join us, because we'll break down everything the rest of the year, as well as be live for Heat games. So hit that sub button.